What's up, everyone? Amethine here, back again with another Dune Awakening guide, talking about farming materials for the mid to late game. And we are going to be focusing on aluminum and jasmium. And there are some things that you're going to need in order to get both, and some things that I also recommend you have to make your life a little bit easier and make farming these more efficient. So, let's get into it. Here we go. Okay, starting off with aluminum. First of all, there is only one thing you actually need in order to farm aluminum, and that is a cut array Mark III or higher. The reason it needs to be Mark III or higher is because Mark III is the bare minimum for a cut array that you can use to actually carve into aluminum in Dune Awakening. If you have a Mark II or lower, you will not even be able to cut into the mineral, which means you can't farm it outside of picking it up from the ground, from the little nodes that you see scattered throughout the east and western shield walls. There's also some in Jabal Al-Garb, but my primary area for farming aluminum is going to be the east and west Helios Gate areas. There is one spot in Jabal Al-Garb that I do like, but I would recommend that you have an ornithopter in order to access that more easily. You can climb that spot, but trust me, flying there so much quicker. So that's all you need is a cut array Mark III or higher. And then as far as what I recommend you have is a vehicle that has substantial storage capacity, such as a buggy with a storage module and a cut array Mark IV or higher equipped, or an ornithopter that gives you more inventory space with storage, something along those lines. Now, why am I saying that vehicles with storage are recommended and not needed? Well, because technically speaking, you don't need a vehicle in order to farm aluminum. They just make it much easier and way more efficient because your character inventory space is not very substantial. You cannot hold a lot of weight, you don't have that many slots, so having a vehicle with storage space is highly recommended so you don't have to go back and forth to your base after only getting a couple pieces of aluminum stored in your inventory. You can put it in the vehicle and then carry more on your person and then haul it back to wherever your base is. Okay, you can see me pulling up my map here so I can plan out my route. I like to use Pinnacle Station, which is up in Jabal Eifrit Al-Garb, as kind of my starting point, but where I'm mainly going to be farming aluminum is in the eastern and western shield walls. I realize I called those the eastern and western Helios Gate before. It's eastern and western shield wall. So east shield wall, west shield wall. I like them both pretty well, almost equally. I would say I like Western Shield Wall a little bit more because they have there's some spots there where aluminum is pretty heavily concentrated, having multiple deposits in like one spot in multiple areas. But there are some spots like that in Eastern Shield Wall too, and that's really going to come down to personal preference. If you have an ornithopter, I would recommend Western Shield Wall. If you don't have an ornithopter, I would recommend Eastern Shield Wall. Because Eastern Shield Wall has a lot of deposits that are more on the ground, whereas Western Shield Wall has a lot that are both on the ground but also elevated on cliff faces, rocky pylons, things like that. So recommend an ornithopter or at the very least a buggy for these. So I go to Pinnacle Station and I kind of just start working my way west from there. And you'll see here in a few minutes or a few seconds, I'll pull up the map and there's this spot in the western shield wall that I'll mark that's amongst a bunch of cliffs and like a mountain face near some enemy camps and settlements. That has a pretty good concentration of aluminum around it up on the cliff face. So if you have an ornithopter or if you don't mind climbing, getting up there to grab that aluminum is really useful. There's also a spot here coming up in Jabal Eifrit Al-Garb where there's this big rock pillar. And I actually just noticed this when I was recording the video, but there's this big rock pillar that has a bunch of aluminum sitting on top of it. Now, aluminum's not as common in Jabal Eifrit Al-Janub as it is compared to eastern and western shield walls, but there are some deposits in this area, particularly on top of this pillar that you're going to see here in just a second. It's actually right in front of me a little bit to my left, this closest one here. So there's a bunch of aluminum deposits on top of this. And so I just set the ornithopter down on top and just grabbed them all real quick. There's some carbon deposits up here too, but I'm at a point where I don't need carbon or steel as much. So I'm focusing on the aluminum and the jasmine, jasmium, which is what we'll cover here in a little bit. But this is just north of the wreck of the palace, or kind of northeast. From the wreck of the palace, not too far from that. So after I leave this spot, I'm going to go up to Pinnacle Station and work my way west a little bit. You'll see me land on the ground and grab some aluminum deposits in the eastern shield wall, and then I'll start heading towards the western shield wall to that spot that's on top of the cliff face that I like. So you're welcome to watch my path after that, but once I go to that cliff face in the western shield wall and grab the deposits that are up there, I really just kind of start working my way counterclockwise around the edge, or kind of central edge, of the western shield wall. And there's a lot of aluminum deposits in that area that are pretty close together. So if you have like the carrier ornithopter or a buggy or something like that, it's pretty easy and efficient to navigate that area. And you'll grab quite a bit of aluminum in one trip and haul it back to your base wherever that happens to be. Mine's down in the eastern Vermilius Gap because I like the spot, I like the location. So I hope this farming route that you're about to watch is helpful to you. Pinnacle Station is a good starting point, I have found, and then you just kind of make a loop from around the east and western shield walls from there. Okay, now we're moving on to Jasmium. I hope the aluminum farming path was useful for you. I hope you get a lot of aluminum out of that. Or if you discover a better path and you think it would be more efficient than the one I'm using, by all means, please let me know in the comments. But as far as Jasmium, you're going to find that in Sheol, or Sheol. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, but it's west of the Western Vermilius Gap. So as far as what you'll need to farm Jasmium, you're going to need a cut array Mark IV or higher, because the Mark IV is the bare minimum cut array required in order to actually cut into the Jasmium deposits. The Mark III that you use for aluminum, if you weren't using one that's higher than that, will not cut into Jasmium. So you need a Mark IV or higher, and then you're also going to need a radiation suit Mark IV or higher, because Sheol is a radiated zone, and the radiation levels vary. It starts out at 1, and the highest I've seen so far is 3, with the most common, I believe, being 2. But for our purposes, for farming this Jasmium, you're going to see level 3 radiation a lot, because you want to focus on these rock formations that kind of look like above ground craters that my character is standing in right now. You want to focus on those, because they always have like a minimum of 2 of these deposits in them, of Jasmium deposits, but I usually see 3 on average, sometimes 4. I might have seen one with 5 in there once, but usually it's somewhere around 2 to 4, with the average being 3. And there's no real set route that I utilize for Sheol. Highly recommend you have an ornithopter. I don't suggest using a ground vehicle like a buggy or a sand bike or a sand crawler, and certainly don't navigate this area on foot. Not just because of the radiation, but because there's a lot of wide open sand here between all of the rock formations with the deposits, which means sandworms are a real nuisance in this area. Not that they aren't in the other ones, but they are more so here because everything is so spread out. So definitely recommend you use an ornithopter to navigate Sheol when you're farming Jasmium. And you can, like I said, I don't have a set route for this, but you can make your way either clockwise or counterclockwise around the rock formations and get a pretty healthy amount of Jasmium along the way, focusing on these crater-like areas that have 2, 3, or 4 Jasmium deposits in them. And then you just hop in your ornithopter and get out. Now, even though you need a radiation suit to get the most out of this area, the Mark IV being the bare minimum, I would recommend that you go with a radiation suit Mark V or higher, just to really maximize the time you get per visit to Sheol. Because the radiation suit doesn't prevent you from getting radiation, it just slows down the process. So the higher level of the suit, the slower the process of you getting a radiation poisoning and dying. So I'm using a Mark V in this video. I would really like a Mark VI, but I haven't quite gathered all the materials to get that yet. So Mark IV, bare minimum for radiation suit. I would suggest Mark V or higher, but Mark IV will be enough to get you a decent amount of Jasmium out of this area. You also, if you're using an ornithopter, which again, highly recommend, you can always just hop in it, fly out of the area for a minute or 2 to let the radiation poison go away, and then fly back in to continue your farming. So that's the end of this guide, guys, other than I'm going to let you watch the rest of the actual footage to see how I go about farming the Jasmium. Please do also hit that like and subscribe button. It really does help me out. I hope this video was helpful to you. And even if you already knew a lot of this stuff, maybe you saw something that I did in here that maybe you didn't think of, or maybe you just enjoyed watching somebody else farm for a little bit. I don't know. So yeah, please do hit that like and subscribe button. It does help me out with the algorithm, getting more eyes on my stuff, because I really do enjoy making this content. If you like what you see, please leave a comment, talk to me a little bit. I always like having conversations with people. Or if you know a better way that I could be doing these farming routes, then please tell me that too. I'm always open to constructive criticism. So once again, I'm Amethine. Y'all have a good one. Hope you enjoyed.